Look who I'm sitting next to. The great President Monroe, the 5th President of the United States of America.
Well, isn't it wonderful you're here? And you're going to cook something for me, I understand.
You bet. Today I'm making for you a fried leg perch that is served on a Salilan crouton. I'm making a brisket straight from Mary Randolph's cookbook. Potatoes with bacon, thyme and garlic, creamed kohlrabi, and a red and yellow beet salad. All to bring you a taste of history. From where, Mr. President?
From Highland.
Our first recipe is a deep-fried leg perch that we're going to serve on a Salilan crouton. Quite an interesting little recipe from the 18th century. And Elizabeth, so nice to meet you.
It's so wonderful to have you here.
Where is this kitchen actually related to the estate?
We are not in James Monroe's home. We're in the domestic slave quarters, where the slaves lived who worked inside the Monroe household.
When I did my research on this recipe, interesting enough, Salilan croutons was many times served with fried fish. Normally, the Salilan is baked in a bun pan that looks like so. For this recipe, however, you want to shape it in a pullman, what we call a pullman shape. Interesting enough, when you look at some of the recipes, there's actually a big piece of Salilan that's used for that. The Salilan is kind of like the starch that you would eat with this fish. Remember, again, in the 18th century, they would have never been served just as one dish. There was always big tables, so this would have been one of many dishes. So we go about this big. Take the side off. We're going to go over to the fire. My lard is already nice and hot. And then we'll take this over and we're going to fry it up really quick. It's a beautiful fireplace, I tell you. We want to cook them kind of not too hot, it's perfect temperature right now, but to make sure they get nice and brown. The Salilan is a brioche, will color really quickly. So now I'm going to let those croutons rest for a little bit while I'm concentrating on my fish. This happens to be what I call a white leg perch. It's a beautiful fish. All you really want to do is just take the fins off. You leave the tail on, but you want to just cut a little short. Penetrate the skin so that the marinade can go inside and get the flavor into the fish. Lemon. A little bit of lemon juice on here. So half a lemon will do it for those 3 fish here. I have a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. A little bit. Good amount of pepper. Salt, a little bit, not too much. Now what you're going to do, you take a little bit of our ketchup that's designed to last 20 years, which is really a fish sauce originating from Malaysia. With a little bit of this over it. You want to take those fish and very, very gently, but a lot of flour you want to pack on there, just like so. Once you have them all ready, your oil has got to be nice and hot, just perfect. You want to fry them until they're golden, golden, golden brown. I want to put the fish in my oil. You can see the ingenuity of the 18th century, how you have that lever. So now, because I wouldn't want to have it on the fire, I bring it off the fire right over here, where I'm going to keep a good eye on it. They'll take a couple of minutes, but they won't take long, because soon as they get nice and golden brown, the fish is done. So while the fish is cooking right now, I'm going to finish my croutons. They're going to get a little bit of lemon. Remember, lemon, again, was a very, very expensive commodity in the 18th century because it all came from Europe. And then it takes a little fish sauce, just a little fish sauce on top of the crouton, like so. And in the meantime, my fish is cooking nicely way in the back. I'm going to go get them. Beautiful. Oh yeah, look at that. Some lemon slices. It wasn't something every day would have been eaten. Then I got some sturgeon over here for a little decorating on the side. Here we go, how beautiful, fresh from the garden. Out back, I have a little bit of parsley. The fried leg perch and a Salilan crouton. James Monroe was one of our most beloved presidents. Let's find out why.
Most people recognize the painting of Washington crossing the Delaware, but few realize the young man depicted holding the flag on Washington's boat is future President James Monroe.
We needed to save the day. We needed to save the revolution.
And that took place at Trenton after all of those defeats. And of course, I won't forget Trenton for the rest of my life. Had I not recruited a surgeon the night before the battle, had that surgeon not been by my side when I get hit, had that surgeon not immediately tucked up that artery, I would have bled to death on the field of battle. And you wouldn't have to worry about this interview today, you see?
James Monroe and his wife Elizabeth officially resided at their expansive 500-acre home in Charlottesville, Virginia from 1799 to 1823. It was Thomas Jefferson who convinced his friend James Monroe to live right next door to him at Monticello.
Mr. President, 3 are the first 5 presidents of the United States come right here from the little village of Charlottesville then.
Well, it's a happy accident. You know, Mr. Jefferson, long before he put together his academical village, wanted a we-sort group of people together.
And Monroe asked Thomas Jefferson to be his mentor in the study of law.
I know how you feel about Mr. Jefferson, and so do I, of course, because he gave us our aspirations, after all.
James Monroe became the 5th President of the United States in 1817, at a time when America had just declared itself victorious over the British in the War of 1812. The British had burned down the president's house, and so the Monroes couldn't move right in.
Well, the president's house wasn't ready when I became president in March of 1817, and by June I thought this is the time, much the way President Washington had done before, that I would go and travel around the country. I made 3 trips, that is, first as far north as Maine, and then up to the Great Lakes, and then the second time around the Chesapeake, and then the third time I went up west as far as the Mississippi River.
For most Americans living in the early 1800s, it was the first time they had ever seen a president. It's estimated that nearly half of the U.S. population, some 4.5 million people, came out to see him. This helped Monroe to become even more popular. His presidency became known as the era of good feelings. He ran uncontested for a second term. The only other time that has ever happened was for George Washington.
The people of the United States were rather pleased with my record for my first term, and so they rather felt that I should continue and were not interested in considering anybody else, and so that's the way it was.
Just like Jefferson and Adams before him, James Monroe poignantly passed away on the 4th of July.
But if I had to pick a day to leave this earth, I would pick the 4th of July. I think with just a little bit of willpower, I might be able to do that too. Wouldn't that be extraordinary?
Elizabeth, this next dish I'm making, obviously, most of the recipes before I make them on the show, I experiment with them. Mm-hmm. When I made this particular recipe, it just blew me out of the water. Now, I know that seafood was mixed in with meat a lot, we know that, but this brisket recipe is just so phenomenal. Plus, it takes a very special ingredient that's called lemon pickle. I'll tell you later more about it. Mm-hmm. That takes 2 months to make by itself. So before I even could do the recipe, I had to make the sauce and wait 2 months to finally cook it. So you're gonna help me now. Chop me some garlic and chop it coarse. While you do that, I'm taking a regular brisket and I'm just trimming down quick the fat of the brisket. The brisket is, by the way, is always very lean on the top, as you know. It's a little fat on the bottom, but you want to keep some. Now watch what I do. I take my paring knife and I penetrate some 1-inch cut deep down, like so. The interesting thing with the oysters is, the smaller the oyster, usually the better the flavor for this. Now those are oysters that are from the Potomac. Now what's interesting is that the recipe calls for a combination of mace, which is the outside of the nutmeg. There's a nutmeg. Mace. Then it gets ground cloves. The most important part, the flavor, comes from the nutmeg. And all 3. So now, look here what I've done. I got the holes. Now I'm going to start. The first one, I'm putting in the bacon. Next one is the oyster. Next one, I'm going to put a little bit of garlic and a little bit of parsley. So basically what you want to do is you want to make this like a checkerboard. You notice it, right? You put a little bit here, a little bit there, and you want to really spread it out, which I'm doing right here. The flavors will marry into the sauce, which is very, very simple. Now, what's interesting about this dish, it's only my second time I made it, but I will tell you that once you eat it later, you're not going to believe the flavor of that. What's now happening is it's going to get salt and a good amount of pepper over it. And now comes the interesting part, completely unorthodox for normal cooking for a chef like myself when I read this recipe first. Because what you do is you put it in flour, and you can do this for me. And you're going to put as much flour as the meat will hold onto it. There you go, carefully. And then more flour on it. Well, I'm going to get my pot over. Look at that. How simple is that? Now goes the red wine. You always want to make sure when you cook that the red wine is good. That is.
It smells wonderful.
Now comes the most important part. This is the lemon pickle that takes 2 months to make. You put this now very gently over the meat. Look at that. Put your finger in there and try. It's an unbelievable, sensational flavor you ever had. Look at that.
It has a very strong flavor.
And now, because as I told you earlier, this requires slower cooking. If I put this completely under high heat, what would happen? I would burn it. Because remember, you don't stir this at all. It kind of simmers in its own juices. Ready? Put it right there. So Elizabeth, very important when you cook like that, you got to keep a close eye on it because this dish takes 2 hours. But remember, it's modest heat. Basically, the red wine and the lemon pickle is the only liquid it gets, and then the flour is going to make it into a sauce. The oysters and the bacon and the parsley will come out of the meat since the meat shrinks, and this gives this fantastic sauce. Elizabeth, I took a great tour to the gardens and the estate. You know what? It went so quick, I didn't realize it. 2 hours. My brisket is done. Imagine.
Oh,
Look at
it
that.
smells wonderful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. I'm going to concentrate on the potatoes quick. I put a little butter in here. Going to melt up right away. A little bit of bacon. The onion that you peeled earlier for me. And you can take 2 garlics and just chop it really quick. Now I have some thyme. Elizabeth, you see how fast it cooked over here? And the spider?
Very quickly.
So what we're going to do is throw the potatoes right into it, and those are Irish white, one of Thomas Jefferson's favorite. I would assume the Monroes as well. Elizabeth, sometimes I show the people, they think they look like they're made out of paraffin. Look at that. See
They're
how?
beautiful.
Yeah, that's how they are. It's absolutely gorgeous. There we go. Our brisket is up. Whew. Mary Randolph, what a woman. So now we're going to do, give me one of the oval bladders behind you. And we'll just keep an eye on my potato. You want to do that? Well, I'm going to put some nutmeg in there, and I'm in business. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the brisket and we're going to cut it up. Look at that. Now you can see the cavities, you see?
Uh-huh.
See where we initially had filled the stuff into it? See that? Isn't that beautiful? This is a historic moment.
Yes.
Getting to actually use White House china from the Monroes. That's not very often that it happens. That's high five for that. That's really not often that it happens. So the potato. All right, so we got our potatoes, the Irish white, and now we want to decorate our thing a little bit. I think very appropriate to have the nasturtium, which is such a great flavor to begin with. Just a little parsley over it. And simplicity, but how beautiful, isn't it? And in combination of the things together, it is just an unbelievable festive meal that would have been served here at Monroe's estate many times. Obviously a lot of prep work involved, as you see. Plus you have to take 2 hours to walk the garden, or take a snooze, or whatever is better, you know? Elizabeth, look what I got. You know what it is?
I have no idea.
It's one of my favorite vegetables growing up as a child in the Black Forest. And it's actually a big 18th century vegetable but forgotten. It's called kohlrabi. You want to peel it, just like so. You know, many times vegetables, when they're really big, people like them because they're saying they get a better deal. Those ones, you want them small. When they're young like that, we in the Black Forest don't even cook it because it's so beautiful and so tender to eat, right? And so sweet, we just kind of shave it into a salad. And it gets a beautiful texture, isn't it nice?
Mm-hmm. It's a little bit spicy.
Mm-hmm. By nature. That's why I like it so much. I like spice, and there's spice in there. So you take it, and for that size, I take it and cut it, what we call it in technical terms, into half moon, like so. See, like about that size. Then what you do, you just blanch it real quickly in the salt water, or you could put it right in a steamer. But try it, so you see, really undercooked. So what we call al dente. See it? Isn't it beautiful? Mm-hmm. The flavor. Now all I do, I made a little bechamel sauce, which is just a cream sauce. Flour, cream. You want to make it very rich, like so. Right, Elizabeth, there it is, huh?
The Monroe china.
Can you tell me something about it?
Well, the Monroes were the first family to have presidential china. Mrs. Monroe, as you know, had very formal tastes that she took with her when she went to the executive mansion. And so the Monroes ordered this presidential china from France. There are 20 stars around the seal in the middle, one for every state that was in the Union at the time that it was made.
Look at how simple that is. Now what I do on that, you hold the leaf like so, and then you go like, you put it right in the middle of the dish. Like I said, you can fry it if you like, but you don't have to. And then you take a little bit of parsley. It's really rich, creamy, but it has the flavor of the kohlrabi that you have discovered. Go for it. Fit for the Monroes.
From the moment Columbus set foot in the New World in 1492, he started a wave of European conquests and colonization that spread like a virus across North, Central, and South America. Over the next 4 centuries, Spain, the Netherlands, France, Britain, and even Russia grabbed as much territory, wealth, and subjects as they possibly could, massacring and subjugating indigenous cultures everywhere they went. After the end of the War of 1812, James Monroe was approached by Britain with a self-serving request. Proclaimed that America will not side with any of the European powers against any other European power. But John Quincy Adams, his Secretary of State, gave Monroe different advice. Adams suggested that Monroe not allow any power to meddle in the affairs of the Americas, and in turn, the United States would keep out of European disputes. This became known as the Monroe Doctrine.
Mr. President, you achieved a lot during your presidency, but your biggest achievement would have been remembered as the Monroe Doctrine, no?
You know, after the Napoleonic Wars, I determined that North and South America should no longer be subject to colonization in the future.
This was a watershed moment in American history. This new country, America, was telling all of Europe to back away from the New World because it was no longer theirs for the taking.
Lady, it's so good to see you again.
Really good.
There is nobody that I could think would be more appropriate to be here with me today than the doctor herself. Doctor of African American Studies. So what I've done already in anticipation of your arrival, I roasted the beets already and I got them on the fire. So I have nice yellow beets and nice red beets. So we want to just take them and peel. There's 2 ways of peeling them, you know. You and I both know it. You peel them with your hand just like so.
Yeah, gotta find the right spot.
You eat a lot of beets, you tell me, don't you? When you
I
cook?
love beets and I like them roasted,
Yeah,
and that's really a historic way that people
Yeah.
often would have prepared
Well, this
them.
one's I roasted. I just put them in the pan
Yeah.
for you because I know time is of the essence.
Well, roasting any root vegetable seems to make it sweeter, but it's particularly true with beet.
Doctor, I'll let you cut the rest of those. So I'm going to just chop a little bit of onion really quick. And then you can chop me a little bit of garlic.
Okay?
And then we're going to... I make the onion for this one coarse.
This kind of recipe would have ended up on the table at the Monroes, but the use of beets and other garden truck would have been very important in the kitchens of the enslaved community. Let me show you some of the gardens here on Monroe's property, and that will give you a sense of what people were growing and using and preserving in the wintertime for their own use within the slave community.
Can't wait for it. You know, I have a soft spot for gardens.
As
I
do
think
I.
everybody should have a garden, and we should all eat from the garden right in the kitchen. Every estate kind of had its own kitchen garden, don't they?
Oh yes, they all had to have a garden to supply fresh produce during the season and winter storage vegetables.
Obviously, this is the estate garden, but the enslaved people would have gardens too, but they grow slightly different produce, I would think, no?
Some different and some overlapping. There would have been cabbages, field peas, dried beans for winter. Many people, if not most, are cooking in one pot. So they're probably mixing what they have at the time. You've got potatoes, but lettuce was easy to grow, and everybody grew lettuces because they were simple and they added a nice, if you had a little vinegar, which was easy to make because everybody had access to apples. So of course, when they had time and the ability and a place to plant, they would plant many of these kinds of foods that would supplement real basic foods like their corn pones. Along with using cornmeal as a thickener in stew, probably corn pone or little cakes of corn would have been the simplest, easiest thing to make, and they're part of an American tradition that's really old, the journey cake, Johnny cake, ash cake, hearth cake. The wonderful thing about them, of course, when they're brand fresh, they're lovely, but they dry and they don't spoil. Along with the cornmeal come the fall garden as that we're standing in. There were always ways to try to make sure that during the winter, people got as much nutrition as they needed. These people kept the whole enterprise working and moving along through the seasons every year.
So Lenny, that was fascinating too. I got a question for you though. Okay. I was told many times that eggs were not just available for everybody.
People within enslaved communities not only had their own gardens, but they many times had their own poultry yards, their own chickens. And they're going to be eating less chicken and eating more eggs because a chicken's going to last a good time. And then when that chicken is finally laid all of the eggs, then they might eat
So
chicken.
maybe it's a little bit of a myth, right?
Yes, I think that it is.
There are a lot of people that put the eggs in early whole so that they discolor completely. Parsley in here, some straight up oil.
Yes,
still
like
today.
pickled eggs in beet juice.
Exactly. And vinegar, and then the mustard. Just dilute a little Dijon mustard in there. Yeah. And now the other thing we can do, Doctor, you can give me like lots of good pepper in here. And I got salt. Stick the walnuts into it. There we go. And now we're gonna just mix it up.
And imagine the subtleties of levels of flavor.
Let me see here.
Try it.
Oh, because the beets are still nice and warm. Oh, I tell you.
Lovely.
Is that fit for Mr. Monroe now?
Fit for Monroe and his company.
So Lenny, isn't that so simple, so easy, so elegant, and so James Monroe?
Absolutely, James Monroe.